I was born right here in South Haven, and then when I was 2 years old, my father moved his family to a shell of a home that his grandfather had given to him. We had no electricity until I was 5. We had no running water. We had a pump out back was our water. My dad was probably the most influential person that I had in my life. And he wasn't only my father, he was my best friend. My father got me started in athletics as just a little boy playing catch with me. I loved it. I loved the activity, I loved the physicalness of it, and being a part of a group, being a part of a team. And I give especially football and wrestling the credit for saving my life in Vietnam and saving the lives of many others too. The mental discipline that I learned from those two sports, the ability to focus in the middle of chaos, in the middle of a crossfire where the enemy is firing at me from one direction and the American soldiers are firing from the other direction.
McCloughan would continue his sports careers at Olivet College in Michigan. When he graduated in 1968, he had his sights set on becoming a teacher and a coach.
So I graduated on June 4th. And then about 2 weeks later, I received a letter from my uncle. You've probably heard of him, Uncle Sam. Sent me a letter and said that he would like to see if I was physically fit enough to be a part of his family. Well, they weren't just checking out to see if I was okay. They were already thinking of drafting me. I reported August 29th. I raised my hand and was sworn into the United States Army. The lucky part was being chosen after basic training to go to combat medical training because draftees don't get those jobs.
Thanks to his college studies in first aid and anatomy, McCloughan was given the opportunity to attend combat medic training. Following his training, McCloughan applied for a teaching position in the Army's Combat Medical School. However, the Army had other plans.
So we're standing in formation the last day, and they're reading through each and every soldier where he's going next. And they got to Jim McCloughan, Southeast Asia, Vietnam. And I'm thinking, I think he's got it wrong. He must have made a mistake. So I went up to the captain afterwards, and I said, I think he made a mistake on Jim McCloughan. And he knew. He said, someone who is a regular Army trumped you, so you are going to Vietnam. I went off into a field. I don't know how long I was there, but I hadn't been to war yet, but I knew enough about war that this could mean that I may never be a coach or a teacher or a dad. When I landed in Vietnam, my first big surprise was walking through an open door from the plane that I took over there and feeling the heat hit me and the stench. One of the things about the medic in Vietnam is it was the first war in which the medics actually also carried a weapon. I had an M16 issued to me. I saw a lot of things that other soldiers didn't see. When they called for a medic, I was the only one often that went to the scene of the accident. I called it, though, a positive job in a negative situation because I could save lives while lives were being taken.
In the spring of 1969, just a few months after arriving in Vietnam, Private First Class McCloughan and his company were given orders to occupy New Yun Hill.
May the 12th, in Tam Key, there was a hill there called New Yun Hill, and the NVA had infiltrated it, and we were going to be a blocking force for what is called kind of a tank unit that would come over the top of that hill and flush them out. And our company commander said, you haven't sent any forward observers in there. So number one, we don't know how many people are in there. Number two, we don't know what kind of weapons they have. So I think this is a flawed mission.
Despite the company commander's reservations, the mission was ordered to move forward.
The next morning, about 7 o'clock, helicopters start coming in. It was pretty good to have 135 at the most on a company. We had been in some skirmishes. We were down to 89 men. We got there, and it was what they call a hot LZ. Hot LZ is when you're being fired upon. Helicopters will not land at a hot LZ. We were told to jump out. I noticed there was a guy lagging behind. He was probably 75 to 100 yards away with a squad of NBA behind him shooting at him. So I jumped up without hesitation, ran out swerving, slid in next to him with a second base slide in.
The soldier had injured his knee jumping from the helicopter earlier. McCloughan threw the man across his shoulders and carried him to safety through enemy fire. That evening, a platoon was ordered to search and clear the area.
And I'm thinking, are they nuts? There's lots of people, I think, out there because we got 2 helicopters shot down coming in here. But we lined up. They had a lead squad going out, and I placed myself, along with Hatton and Mittendorf, 2 machine gunners, right behind that squad. They ran into an ambush. Just all kinds of firepower going on. About that time, I looked up over this berm out of the trench line up towards Nuyan Hill, and it was probably a mile away itself. And it looked like little ants or lava coming down off that hill, and I thought, there's a lot of people up there. I hear a call for a medic up over the top of this berm. So I looked up over there, and I thought I saw 2 men over in a bush. I jumped up, got as low as I could, headed towards those bushes, and 2 of the men from the first squad had made their way without their weapons into these bushes. About that time, a rocket-propelled grenade came in and hit behind me. I don't know how close behind me, but it pelted me from head to foot, and it stung really bad. But I didn't pay too much attention to it because I was focused on these 2 guys. And I went over and I couldn't see any wounds on them or anything, but they wouldn't move. They were frozen in place. And I dragged those 2 men. You'd be surprised how strong you can get when you get scared. And anybody says they're not scared. I'm still focused, but I know that I'm in a dangerous situation. I dragged them across that berm and into that trench line. I heard combat medic, and so I went out probably 4 or 5 more times. We finally got a medevac in, and we're putting people on the medevac. And the lieutenant, company commander, says, "Get on, Doc." Well, then I remembered I'd gotten hit by a rocket-propelled grenade, and I looked down and saw my blood all over me. I said, "Well, I'm not going." And he looked at me with puzzled. He said, "Why not? You're going to need me." That's all I said. I thought by telling him that I wasn't getting on, that I spent my last day on earth. But I'd rather be dead in a rice paddy than alive in a hospital and find out that one of my men, one of my brothers, was killed because I wasn't there.
At sunrise, the battle paused, but resumed again that evening. Like the night before, McCloughan was repeatedly called to tend to wounded soldiers and carry them through the crossfire to relative safety. The company was down to just 32 men and running short on ammunition. At one point amid the chaos, McCloughan made a bargain.
All of a sudden, a thought came out of nowhere. It had been since I was a small boy that I told my father that I loved him. You didn't do that. You didn't tell your brothers you loved them. Dads didn't tell sons, and sons didn't tell dad. And I had a conversation with the Lord. And I said, "Lord, if you get me out of this hell on earth so I can look my father straight in the eye just one more time and tell him that I love him, I'll be the best dad, I'll be the best coach, and I'll be the best teacher that I could possibly be." And an incredible peace came over me. It was no longer in my ballpark. Went back out front, started fighting some more. That's the thing about the medic. You're not only a medic, you're a grunt. All of a sudden, the captain says, hey, they're going to try to get a resupply into us because we're getting low. I mean, we've been fighting for 2 days. Somebody get out there with this probe light. And I'm thinking, well, somebody's going to jump up and go out there. Nobody did. So I got the strobe light, crawled out on my belly. I'm holding this, and I put it in a helmet, and these streaks go over the top of me. I look like a fireball go over the top of me. Pay much attention to it, but I said, boy, if those things get any lower, I'm history. They couldn't get the resupply helicopter in. I had to make my way back then to the unit without getting hit. The next morning, got everybody on the helicopter, and we had a lot of cleanup work to do there to get them on, and I was putting people in body bags. And I started back towards where Hatton was standing. It's the last I remember. I woke up in an aid station. They had an IV in me. Going 2 days without anything to eat or drink. I had dehydrated. Probably the most devastating thing about that battle was the fact that we went in with 89 men, and later on we found out there were 2,000 NVA and 700 VC on that hill. Well, if you remember, I asked the Lord if he'd get me out of that situation and get me back to where I could become a teacher and a coach and a dad. So I was really excited about coming home and getting into the classroom. And I ran to my father in the O'Hare Airport, and I threw my arms around him and I told him that I loved him. And he said those 3 words back to me as if we'd been doing that regularly for 24 years of my life so far. And that was our greeting and our departure from that point on. I taught my children and my grandchildren and my athletes and even guys that I coached with it. Hey, you know what? Those 3 words are valuable. It's okay to say those. It's as macho as it can get.
In 2016, 47 years after the battle on New Yun Hill, McCloughan received a voicemail.
Hi, Jim. This is Senator Debbie Stabenow. As you know, we've been working to recognize get your service recognized in Vietnam, and the exciting news is that our Defense Secretary, Ash Carter, just contacted me that he's going to recommend your heroic services in the war for the Medal of Honor.
Well, I'm going to tell you what my honest opinion is of this medal that's around my neck. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to 89 men. 89 men that went in against a very powerful enemy who had more weaponry than we had. It belongs to them as much as it belongs to me. There's a lot of people who did some very brave things, as brave as probably anything I did, and nobody saw them do it. I wear this for them too. I held 18, 19, and 20-year-old boys in my arms. I heard their last words, and I watched the last breath of air come out of them. And I can tell you that the freedom that you and the rest of the Americans enjoy day in and day out has been paid for in full. Had I never gone to Vietnam, I would have never met some of the kindest, most compassionate, loving, courageous men that I've ever met in my life. I would have been cheated out of meeting those brothers who continue to be my brothers to this day.